Toby, we are from Ceruleo. Welcome to episode 3 of Burying the Dead Behind the Scenes.
Today we're joined by the actor Niall Ashdown to chat about the show.
Hi Neil.
Hello Toby, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good to see you. How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm alright. I've had a lockdown haircut. I feel a bit more human.
Even my dead father drops by with Dido on one arm and Belinda on the other. It's a constant stream of people wanting things from me.
We were very glad to have you in some shows back when we were allowed to do shows that had an audience. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, as a first question, what were your initial... I suppose we've talked about it before, but maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how you were asked to do it and what it was described as to you in the first place, because it wasn't necessarily, I would imagine, exactly what it came to be.
It was the first time I met Emily and Clare, the writer, and through a kind of mutual friend, as these things often are, and I got sent a script which I read, I enjoyed, and I realised that there were going to be lots of tunes being played that I'd never heard, so I thought, well, that'd be interesting, just to kind of get sort of inside, because my only experience of Purcell up to this point was grade 1 piano piece, which my piano teacher, Mrs. Precious, that was her name, Gertrude Precious. Gertrude Precious.
Do you remember which piece?
It was called Sarah Band, and I had to do 3 pieces for my grade 1, and which is as far as I got, by the way, and that was the one I really couldn't play very well, and so I sort of hated the very name Purcell. And
Mrs. Precious stopped you playing the piano?
Sort of, yeah, he did in a way. Well, Mrs. Precious did really. And I'm married to my wife Becca really likes Purcell as well, so she was like, ooh, and I was like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what it is. So that was nice. And then of course, sort of coming in, and I just auditioned and read a bit of the sequence of the Great Fire of London, which is a kind of rapidly accelerating scene of panic and excitement and fire and all those things. And so I read that as best I could, and then I got asked to do it, so that was really nice. But beyond it being me talking quite a bit and then some songs in between, I didn't really know. No, so it was but that felt like an adventure, so that was good.
Saturday the 1st of September 1666, and in Pudding Lane lives Thomas Farrader, baker to the Navy. Well, he says, Saturday is always the longest and the busiest day, but I check those ovens before locking up. It's not my fault.
One of the things that really interested us about working with you was your work as an improviser, and I wondered how you found that made a difference to the rehearsal process that we had, where we were working very closely with Tom and Clare to create something from the beginning, with possibilities of changing things as they came up.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple of shows sort of on my own, so I wasn't worried about talking to the audience. But one of the things I discovered by doing that was, and they were kind of autobiographical to a large extent. And I discovered that I just wanted to know what I was going to say and then say it however I wanted to say it on any given performance. And then it sort of ended up being pretty much the same each time, because in the playing of it in front of an audience, you found out, oh, that's much the best way to do it. So I wanted to keep that sort of sensibility in the rehearsal room at least, and then we might find a way of keeping things. But also there were elements within the script that I really wanted. There were some very nice chunks of writing, so I didn't want to not do those bits. So it was a kind of balancing act between having the latitude and the license to do things like improvise at a particular line, and also stick to the nice stuff that was going on in the script anyway, and just learn that properly. But a lot of the improvising came out when we did it, sometimes because I made mistakes, and There was one particular, I think it was at 11 o'clock in the morning show, which is not my best time. That's right. Not my best time of day, where I referred to the Great Fire of London happening in 1966, I think. That was one thing. And then there was also the there was the reference to the young what's the word? Anyway, the young singer that Purcell works to, who was Letitia Dean in this particular, the Eastenders actress.
I really enjoyed the way you got out of it as well.
Well, I think I just went, oh no, that's EastEnders. That was not really particularly light on my feet. Just acknowledgement of vulnerability, I think is what it was. But I like it when things. I mean, I do like it when things, not that they go wrong, but then something unusual happens. And I think theatre is a live event, and one of the nice things about working with you guys is you gave me permission and a bit of license to do that, and kind of worked around it and weren't freaked about it, which, to be honest, if I'm in a proper scripted play, sometimes people kind of go, you can't do that, you just can't do that, and I kind of go, oh. So it's been, so it was really nice. I felt that was very much welcome. It also makes the whole rehearsal process quite playful, which I think is good.
Love's rapture so short and so sweet.
But alas, should you change?
Ah, tell me not so.
What would you say was the most difficult part of the show to do?
The most intimidating one was doing a duet with Emily.
My dear,
My fairest.
my dear.
I wondered about that. I was going to ask a separate question about that, because you had to sing in the show, and it's the sort of thing where if I'm, as a musician in any kind of show, and they ask me to do any acting or frankly just walking like I had to do in this one, I found it terrifying. But it seemed like in the process and in the rehearsal process that it worked so easily. And I know you've done a little bit of singing and things like that in other shows you've been in. So I was going to ask, was it really as easy as it seemed to us, or behind the scenes was it a terrifying, horrendous experience?
It's just I've never been trained, so you kind of have, it's imposter syndrome times 3,000 when you get with people who really know how to sing. So if I sing and it's all right, it's not through hard work, it's sort of accidental. And so and that's not me being self-effacing, it is accidental. I think just having to do a duet with somebody who has a really beautiful voice is a bit like, I'm just going to look a bit embarrassing, excuse me. But it was fine. It sort of suited his character, and it was, in terms of in terms of the dramatic arc, it was really sweet, actually. That was, what else was difficult? I think, not difficult, but I got very moved towards the end quite often, which is a sort of different kind of difficult. And so sometimes I would be a bit tearful and sometimes I wouldn't, but I found the end very moving, and I found the section about his difficulty trying to have children was very moving as well. So I thought, but it was, as soon as it sort of started, we did the first performance and the music kicked in, and you could feel, as I'm not an aficionado of Purcell, I didn't realise until we first did the show that you'd hear people going, as soon as the title was mentioned, he went, oh, is that? So there was that kind of like, that little element of like gig theatre where people are waiting for the song, which I think, although it's a very coherent dramatic structure that works really well, there's a nice frisson in the audience when those things crop up, and I didn't realise how potent that would be as well. But yeah, it wasn't that difficult after a while, if I'm being honest, because it was fun and it sort of seemed to work pretty well. So
that's good. I'm glad it wasn't a horrendous experience.
There was a song. It was written for us. You were a girl who was going somewhere, and wherever that was, I wanted to go there with you.
You were saying about how you were singing with Emily in a scene at the beginning of the second half where you looked back at when you'd met, and you've said before that you really loved that scene for a number of reasons. I wondered if you could talk to us about them.
I just thought it was just a very nice, simple evocation of and I know, looking at me, this is going to sound weird, but a really simple evocation of like two sort of 19, 20, 21-year-olds getting together, in as much as it was awkward and diffident and difficult and took far too long because people don't talk directly to each other at that age. But there's this beautiful backdrop, which is this most gorgeous song, which is kind of simple and complicated at the same time, and it's just the most beautiful. It's my favourite song in the whole thing, I think. I think it's just an out-and-out beautiful tune.
It's a good example, I think, of what worked so well about the show, which is that Purcell's music is inherently theatrical, that song included. You know, they're not songs just about disembodied things. They're songs that are sung by characters or to characters, or about sort of specific things. But a lot of the time we don't have the theatrical context, or even if we do, the theatrical context is a bit clunky or something. And if you try and stitch them together exactly, it doesn't really work. So that was a good example of where we took a theatrical song out of context, but in a theatrical context, and it worked really well. Just set the two of them together. And actually, if you look at that song, if you look at the lyrics, it's really about sort of male conquest with regard to love and physical love, if you will, rather than something emotional. But it's such a beautiful tune, it works on an emotional level as well.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm glad that came across for you.
It did, and I think there's Tom did some nice work with kind of like you had to come and sit on the bed once we had a bed to use, and so there was this nice. I kind of like that. I like live music shows where the musicians are sort of have to be drawn into being more than just players. Not that just playing isn't a tremendous skill as well, but if you're on stage, I like the involvement.
How did Purcell's character change for you from the first rehearsal to the last show?
I think if I knew anything about him, I knew that he'd written some dirty songs and he used to hang out in taverns, and yet he was still a brilliant musician. So there was a bit of me thinking he was there's something a bit rock and roll about that. There's something a bit like if he was in the 60s, he'd be throwing televisions out of windows and driving Rolls Royces into swimming pools. But Clare had written somebody who was like a regular bloke who just happened to be brilliant at making music, writing music, and so I think if I achieved anything in it, it's just making him a regular bloke who just happened to be brilliant at something. And I think a lot of the brilliant artists I know sort of take their own, I was going to say genius, but anyway, their extremely brilliant abilities for granted. They go, "Oh, it's just what I do." And I think that's most of the people I know that I like and respect are sort of like that. They're not up themselves about art. They're kind of like artisans. This is what they do. And it's not that doesn't mean that they don't take it very, very seriously, but they have fun with it and they play with it, and because that's who they are as creative individuals. And so I really liked occupying a space of a person who was just a normal bloke who struggled to have children, who had a job at the court where he had to toe the line, like everybody does when they go to work. And I really liked that he had all the kind of normal currency of something that felt very contemporary, which was a jobbing person who just happened to be on the sly an absolute genius at it.
Neil, thanks so much for coming on to talk to us. It was such a pleasure to work with you, and we hope to see you again soon.
Yes, I hope to work with you all again soon, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the show. It was an absolute pleasure, and I will treasure it for always.
Next week we'll be talking about us, Ceruleo, and the music that we performed in Burying the Dead.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out.
Thanks for watching!